so we're here at Data Centre World Frankfurt, and I believe you have done a presentation already today, so perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about what that was, and then we'll ask a few more questions about how the data center industry is going for yourselves.
Yeah, it sounds good. I did give a keynote speech today at 2. The topic was rethinking data center sustainability. I work for a nonprofit that focuses on measuring comprehensive energy efficiency and emissions in data centers, so building efficiency, IT efficiency, and CO2 emissions. And I'm going around being a missionary and telling people to actually start measuring their efficiency.
Okay, and in terms of sustainability, obviously there's been some, should we say, political pushback in, we are sure we know the names and the countries involved. Is that filtering through to the data center industry, or are you finding that overall the industry is still very much committed to its sustainability and ultimately net zero target that it's had for quite a while?
I try to be politically correct here. I believe the data center industry is not doing enough proactively to be sustainable. I think the industry should be more proactive when it comes to sustainability, efficiency. What I see and what I hear from clients is they often only move when there's regulatory pressure or when clients ask for it. We're a booming industry, but for good reasons. Data centers are the backbone of everything that's digital, of every phone, of every online conversation. So the industry is super important. Without data centers, nothing runs. But I think data centers should feel more responsible to grow sustainably and, like I said, to be proactive when it comes to efficiency, to sustainability.
And do you worry, because I mean the AI explosion we're sort of in the earliest days, and I think the predictions are that sort of data center power consumption is going to double by, the early 2030s, so that doesn't sound too sustainable. So are you worried that the industry's already perhaps not doing enough, and then AI comes along and we're going to be in a tricky situation?
I had two charts in my presentation. The first one is an estimate that data center energy consumption from 2020 to 2034 will increase tenfold. That's made in company estimate. So from 240 terawatt hours to 2,400 terawatt hours. And the other thing is, and that's a consequence of it, is that by the end of the decade, data centers will emit 2.5 billion tons of CO2. And now, many think that's because of embodied emissions. It's carbon in servers and concrete. But in the data center, over the life cycle, let's say 20 years, 76% of emissions are operational emissions. So with the growth, as you said correctly, comes the responsibility to make sure that you don't emit those 2.5 billion tons of CO2, because it is a lot.
I suppose then the question would be, how sustainable can the industry, what's the reality? I know they say we can be sustainable and digital, but is that achievable, or do we have to compromise?
No, we're from the industry, we're not activists, but I think we as the industry have to be honest. Data centers cannot be sustainable. We use energy, we emit carbon. There's no way around it. There's no such thing as green data center, there's no such thing as a green energy. But that doesn't mean you cannot be sustainable in a way that you try to minimize the harm you do. Try to be as efficient as you can, efficient building, efficient server utilization. Global average server utilization is anywhere between 7 and 15%. That means 85% in the IT of energy. It's just going to waste. Use the infrastructure you have to the maximum, to not having to build, 15 more AI data centers that each consume 1 gigawatt of energy. Let's use what we have as efficiently as possible to not harm the planet more than we have to.
And in terms of traditionally the data center facilities folks and the IT folks sort of plough their sort of separate paths, but there is beginning to be collaboration. But is that the key to getting more sustainable, the much better conversations between them? Because obviously the IT load's quite important here when we're talking about efficiency of service and stuff like that, and then the facilities folks responding. So is that the key conversation, or are we talking about governments that need to drive it all the way down the chain? What are your thoughts?
We promote this comprehensive efficiency framework, data center and IT. So we're trying to break down these silos, but we still very much see that it's still two different worlds. The best example is Data Center World, where we are. It's a tech show overall. There's a part Data Center World, and there's a part cloud and AI. It's not the same. It's different conferences, it's different people. When we talk to the data center industry about what we do in efficiency, they immediately understand, PUE, energy efficiency, whatever. When we talk to IT about their efficiency, what they say is, my co-locator's over there, go talk to him. And the IT part efficiency is still very much a, nascent topic. It's not there yet at all.
And in terms of the measuring side, I mean, you mentioned PUE, which obviously been around for quite a while in the industry, and some people are fans of it, and others think it's maybe abused a little bit. Do you think there's time for a new set of metrics to bring together, as you say, the two together to get really accurate measurement of sustainability targets, etc.?
I absolutely do. Yeah.
And again, can the industry do that, or where do you think that can come from?
We do that.
Okay, right.
I absolutely think we should break up or stop looking at isolated metrics. We have a framework, for example, for DC infrastructure efficiency. It takes into account PUE, takes into account waste heat, takes into account on-premise renewables. All this will give an efficiency index. In the IT, it takes into account server utilization, how much of your storage is used, how much of your network you use, efficient technology. I'm not saying our framework is the best, but we're exactly doing that, trying to come up with not 15 different isolated metrics, but a way to look at the end-to-end efficiency of your data centers with one framework. And I think that this should be the future. I think we need to stop looking at isolated metrics, start more system thinking. It goes further than that. If we talk about, is the data center efficient? PUE says it is. Okay, but if it doesn't recycle any waste heat or any energy, the energy just goes to waste. If it's, you could connect it to the grid, you could, I don't know, there's so many things you can do with a data center to make it more sustainable if you have a systems thinking and not just this one isolated metric. I have a PUE of 1.2, I'm efficient.
And in terms of the digital world, I mean, is that, we're stuck with it and we can't expect consumers to change their habits, or is there a potential, whether it's through charging mechanisms or whatever it is, that we could all have a few less photos of our dogs and cats on our phones and stuff? Do you think that's possible, or we just have to accept that digital consumption is going to carry on expanding and therefore the data center industry has to do the best that it can rather than encourage folks to use actually a little bit less of their services, if you like?
I think nothing is harder than changing the behavior of people. We all have, I guess, a smartphone with a couple of photos on there. But your point is brilliant. Yeah, I recently read that 60% of data storage in the world is dark data, data that's used either once or never. And like that data, don't quote me on that, that data is like equivalent to 3 million flights, London, Barcelona, just storing that data. So yes, we all have to do our part, we all can do our part. Of maybe not attaching 20 megabyte attachments to an email, but sending a link, not having 3,000 photos you don't need anymore on your phone and on your computer. Yes, we all have our parts to play, yes.
And I've been very cynical. Do you think there's an element of the data center folks thinking, well, we don't actually want to encourage less consumption, because obviously, I'm not suggesting that we're going to close loads of data centers, but we might not have to build as many. So do you think they're not desperately keen on telling everyone to be much more efficient with their data storage, for example? Or
being from the industry, I think it is not up to the data centers to tell the people to create less data, because they're basically on the branch that they're sitting on. I understand that it cannot be their business model to tell people to use less data.
And maybe just
so in this case, the industry is guilty as charged, yes, but their business model is data.
Yeah. Fair enough. And maybe just finally, are you optimistic that the industry is, as you say, maybe not become truly sustainable, but it will at least make as great an effort as it can to become as sustainable as it can, bearing in mind the digital landscape it's sort of required to underpin?
I am. The question is how. I am. We're a voluntary certification, if you want. So we're very much about the be proactive approach. We encourage the industry to itself be proactive about sustainability and do more than they do actually, or than they do today. I do think, however, that a lot of it will have to do with regulations that will tighten, with hopefully clients, IT clients in a data center, or us people demanding more of data centers operating, asking them, what is your efficiency? Did you actually measure it, or is it just a net zero pledge to 2050? But I do think that the industry will get more sustainable in the future.
And I know I said finally, but I'll say finally, do you think that governments are sufficiently knowledgeable to put in place the right regulations, or are they sort of fairly crude, if you like? Like we hear it's cases where planning permissions just denied for a data center just because it's seen to be a power consumer, etc. Do you think they can be trusted to put the right legislation in place?
That's again a question where I try to be politically correct. I think the German Energieeffizienzgesetz, their energy efficiency law, is a good example that it's absolutely necessary to have the industry on board when you create regulations, and to have people that actually know what a data center is, how it functions, what efficiency is, to have them on board. If you don't, there is a risk that you create some paper tigers that might not be this well thought through.
Okay, Matthias, you give me a lot of your time. Appreciate it. Thanks very much. Enjoy.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.